Hey, Paul, there's other people that if you've joined and it says Tracy Gage under your name, or you might want to, Paul, are you still there?
I am here, yeah.
So are you able to move all those people? And I
hmm
wonder if there's a way that,
I'll move anyone who is not the real Tracy Gage. It,
and
it
there's
does look
also
like the
like,
panelist. The panelist link looks like it got shared. So
yeah,
uh,
so there might be more coming that we'll have to.
I will be on the lookout for imposter Tracy Gages. I know the real Tracy
There
Gage because we were just in
and other
Florida.
names. There's some people got in with their real with their regular name. I'm not sure. So I don't know if you reshared that, Amber, and that got out to folks, but
Okay, it shouldn't really matter, but
okay.
okay, I'm gonna start the video.
Greetings, I'm Chuck Lennox. I am the coordinator of the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation, which is an organization of professional groups from around the world that support heritage interpretation in all its forms. I want to welcome you to our webinar series, Global Excellence in Heritage Interpretation. I trust you will enjoy these webinars from various member groups and from other speakers around the world. I think you'll gain a new perspective on heritage interpretation. Let's introduce our member groups.
Hello, my name is Jackie Lee and I am the chair of AHI, the Association for Heritage Interpretation for Britain and Ireland. And we are absolutely delighted to be part of the GAHI webinar series.
Hello from Interpret Europe. Our community is also happily contributing success stories to this Global Excellence webinar series. Lean back and enjoy.
Hi, my name is Kylie Christian and I'm President of Interpretation Australia. I would like to welcome you to this year's Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretations webinar series. We have a great group of discussions and presentations for you from all around the world, so I do hope to see you online.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to you all. My name is Nick and I am the chair of the Interpretation Network of New Zealand. We are a network designed to bring together interpretation professionals and showcase the best practice happening around our beautiful country of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Hola, mi nombre es Antonieta Jiménez, soy fundadora y directora de Interpat MX, la Asociación Mexicana de Intérpretes del Patrimonio, una asociación fundada recientemente en 2019, y a nombre de la Junta Directiva quiero transmitirles nuestro enorme gusto y entusiasmo de ser parte de esta alianza global.
Hello, bonjour, je m'appelle Jennifer Dick. I'm the chair of Interpretation Canada. We are a community that supports, engages, and inspires heritage interpreters across Canada.
Hi there, I am Paul Caputo. I'm the executive director with the National Association for Interpretation in the United States. We are so proud to be one of the organizing partners of the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation Excellence in Interpretation series. So proud to be part of this organization right now, 7 organizing partners from around the world. Thank you all for being part of such an inspiring and amazing profession.
Hi, I'm Tracy Gage, Executive Director of the Interpretive Guides Association, which is a Canadian-based interpretive guide training and certification organization, presently representing close to 2,000 certified members who work as interpretive guides, as educators, and as outdoor leaders internationally. We're proud to be part of the Global Alliance of Heritage Interpretation's family of professionals, and we're excited to explore the world of interpretation with you.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in the world. This is Chuck Lennox again with the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation. I want to welcome you to one of our webinars this year in our series Global Excellence in Heritage Interpretation, today hosted by Interpretive Guides Association, one of our partners in Canada. Today's webinar is Interpretation, Land Trust, and Indigenous Partnerships. Please put any questions you might have during the talk in the Q&A box, and we will answer those questions at the end. Let me pass the screen over to Amber with the Interpretive Guides Association to introduce our speaker. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chuck, and welcome everyone. It is a pleasure to speak to interpreters from all over the world. I am Amber Ward, the Member Services Coordinator with the Interpretive Guide Association, a Canadian-based interpretive training and certification organization representing close to 2,000 certified members who work as interpretive guides, as educators, and as outdoor leaders. The IGA is honored to be part of the tradition of guiding that began in the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We are grateful to live, work, and play on these ancestral lands. I am thrilled to introduce our speaker for this webinar, Joanie McGuffin. Joanie is on our board of directors. She lives and works along the shores of Lake Superior, the second largest lake in the world by surface area. Joanie came to the IGA about 8 years ago, looking to learn more about the power of interpretation has to connect people to place. Not long after, a beautiful relationship formed between the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy and the IGA. Joanie has been doing lots of great work in interpretation along Lake Superior. We have chosen her to speak to this global group as an opportunity to introduce people around the world to the culture and ecology of the Lake Superior area and the ways Joanie's been working to bring interpretation from an IGA perspective into the mix. May I welcome Joanie.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to be here this evening. And I am just blessed to be here in the Muskoka waters along the Muskoka River, but I'm usually up in the traditional territory of the Robinson-Huron Treaty, Sault Ste. Marie, the confluence of the Great Lakes where the outflow of St. Mary's River is from Lake Superior. And that is the place of the Métis, the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis community, the Batchewana First Nation, Garden River First Nation, and Canoes across the river, as well as the Hoot tribe. And I want to acknowledge, because that is where our story will be coming from tonight. And without further ado, I won't be able to look at chat questions and things, but I'm happy to talk after the program is over, and we can do that. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to start with my love of my life, Gary. He might be on here tonight, I'm not sure. But I have to put us both up there because the story is coming from both of us. And it's a really personal story, but it's one that we tried to grow into a bigger story. And behind the scenes, Gary's always got his camera in hand. And so I'm always looking as if I'm just Joanie out there. I'm going to take you on a journey that connects us to water. We all have a role to play in caring for water. We are water. In Anishinaabe-Moan, the word nebe makes water sacred. We can start by taking away the word the, and water becomes a living being. It has a soul and a spirit, and it is the force of life for all of us. I love Josie's hands. I use this piece of artwork often, holding these beautiful waters that are at the heart of Turtle Island. I just came up with a few words. I'm not really a poet, but they came to me as I was working on this presentation tonight. And I want to just start with saying we're going to learn some water stories from the greatest lake on Earth. It is actually the greatest expanse of fresh water on Earth, though it's not the deepest. So it holds one of the superlatives of the Earth's Great Lakes. In the beginning, there was a long journey connected by water, love, and a canoe. 10,000 kilometers of paddling bookended by salt water. A green and growing world woven with stories told by 100 million voices that make Earth sing. Interpretation catches these silken threads, spinning experience into memory. Water is the most beautiful analogy for connection, communication, for all of us as human beings. But there's another beautiful word in Anishinaabemowin, and that is Indawe Maganadok, and it means all our relatives. Every living and inanimate being is, in an Indigenous way of knowing, one of our relatives. Let's start this story from Turtle Island, from outer space. I love, like, how did anybody know that this great North American continent looked like a turtle? And it has long been Turtle Island, and all those geopolitical lines erased, we see at her heart this great freshwater expanse of Lake Superior at the top of the chain of Great Lakes that feed the ocean on the eastern seaboard. And it's really easy to see why this is so important, as a fifth of the surface fresh water on Earth. It is an imperative gold of the times in which we live. It has never not been so, but today we tell stories that have to bring us close together to understand we can't do without water. This is the place from which I acknowledge the traditional territories, and near where Gary and I live, just north of the river at the outflow of Lake Superior. I was blessed to grow up here, actually, in the Muskoka Lakes. My mom's in the stern of the canoe, my brother, my sister, I'm paddling the bow. Gary and I both were blessed to grow up paddling canoes and being on the water, feeling safe, you know, that Maslow hierarchy of needs, that we need to feel safe and comfortable on and in the water in order to have joy around it. When I first met Gary in college, he asked if I'd walk the Appalachian Trail with him from Georgia to Maine. In all that walking, we just kept talking about paddling because we're kind of at our hearts. We're really water people. But it was a really good time to plan how we could actually see our own country and see it through a slow way. We had seen the land through the mountains by walking, but we planned next a journey that would take us from saltwater to saltwater on a journey of 7 months over 2 paddling seasons, from ice out to freeze up. I highlight once again Lake Superior in this because it is how we first met Lake Superior. We had paddled for 2.5 months by the time we arrived. There was so much upstream paddling from the Gulf of St. Lawrence up the Ottawa River and into the Great Lakes and so on. But it was really beautiful to meet one of the highlights that we had already acknowledged from a beautiful book Wayland Drew wrote called Lake Superior, The Haunted Shore, the only photographic book on our coffee table when I grew up. And we had a lot of trepidation about this great lake as well. So you'd think the hardest part would be to set off in salt water, on the ocean, in the tides, amongst the whales, and it was pretty treacherous out there. We were starting in Quebec, hence French on one side, English on the other, and the support of a brewery that helped us do a journey in which we gave weekly commentary through our national CBC radio across the country for weekly reports, which in those times, without satellite, without cell phones, without anything, was a huge adventure in itself to make happen. As we paddled in this simple form of travel, we were always acknowledging that these waterways, like we see them connected on a flat map, but these waterways are the veins, the arteries, the movement of people across Turtle Island for thousands of years in trade and travel and homelands. That water is at the edge of where everybody lived. And the canoe, this incredible watercraft, and our first, experience on Lake Superior to look out from cliffs, the highest on Lake Superior at the Sleeping Giant, which were once covered in ice 10,000 years ago. And that great weight of ice, when it lifted and melted and moved back, it left us with these fossil lakes from the Ice Age. And it's why the waters are so precious. They are rejuvenated and replenished by the watershed itself. But these what was here before, we don't know. But that people lived at those heights as the ice moved back was really an amazing way to think that we're just a blip in time. We moved from the Great Lakes St. Lawrence forest and up into the boreal, the greatest circumpolar forest on Earth. It's another superlative landscape. And through this, 650 First Nations and Inuit people live, and to today are seeing the incredible effects of what climate change is doing to the thawing ground in this landscape. In those times, it was an amazing connection by water to meet people all along the way. But we totally fell in love with Lake Superior. Lake Superior. How can you not love Lake Superior? It's gorgeous beauty. It's massive expanse. It's like the prairies, if you love the open skies, the open waters, all the light that is reflected in the seasons, and just the movement and life of the water itself. It is Gitchigaming, superior. She's like a great mother of water. And it is really interesting that she lies at the top of the Great Lakes. And each way, like journeys unfolded for Gary and I through a number of years before we came to try and think about how we could do things on a bigger scale. We were writing stories and doing presentations and publishing books and that sort of thing. But it was deeply held in our understanding of water, the connectedness. As we moved around the shores of Lake Superior for 3 months, paddling our little canoes, we paddled 2 of them. We never, even though illegally at the time, acknowledged that we crossed a US-Canada border at one point in Minnesota, Ontario. And then we came back into Ontario across Whitefish Bay. And I know we wouldn't even do that today, but it was really cool to think about. There are no lines on the water. And the beautiful South Shore with its amazing vast sand beaches and the kettles in the rock here in one of the rivers, the Presqu'Isle, to some of the 200 rivers that we would explore over the years to come that flow into the lake. And seeing it in all seasons helped us to produce a book. That was our first photographic book. I want to acknowledge that there are over 200 rivers flowing into Lake Superior. And we actually live just up in the base of those hills in the distance there. And this is the Gully River, which is a main river that flows into the eastern side of Lake Superior. And this whole vast area of the plains around the Gully River would at one time been, vast white pine forest, easy to harvest, easy to change. Today, we have a small amount of that tree species, but through the hills going north and up the eastern side of the lake, you can see these great sweeping beaches. And the old shorelines are really prevalent, and you can see them as where the highways are, the new highways they're right next to the old highway of water. And the old hills in the distance, the Algoma Hills, they were once the highest mountains in the world. This beautiful landscape of Lake Superior is bridged by 2 huge forest ecosystems, the Great Lakes St. Lawrence or Northern Forest with its beautiful sugar maples and the colors of fall, white pines and yellow birch. And then further north, we get into the boreal, which, as I said, is the big circumpolar forest where 3 billion songbirds breed a year, and where is a tremendous resource of water and a source of oxygen. And it's actually just really one of the most important forests and far less known than the Amazon watershed, but a very, very essential part of our planet. And the conifers are a big feature in the boreal forest. A new part of life came to us in 1999. We already traveled with our dog and saw the landscape in a small family way that was growing now with the birth of our daughter in 1999. And 3 years later, we paddled the Heritage Coast. And we did this in a big 21-foot canoe where we carried all our supplies and all of our equipment to be able to use the new and coming technology of sharing through the internet. And that was our first one was in 1997 doing that. And then in 2002, we carried a huge satellite phone. All of our equipment weighed 100 pounds in the Pelican box. And today we carry our small phones with us. It was a really great experience to see the land and the life, the waters and the teachings of the land through a child's perspective. We traveled slower. We were down on the ground a lot more. We were much more conscious. We're always conscious about the weather and the safety and so on, but a lot more so when you're carrying your family aboard. And I think it was a really beautiful connection to have with understanding stories that we were starting to hear about our responsibility to the 7 generations before us and coming after us. And we need to pay attention to a world that is not just in the here and now. And that respect and responsibility, when you travel by the water, your children as well as you are drinking those waters and swimming in those waters. And we are that water. What we're doing to that water, we become that water. These were really fun years. And at the time, the caribou still living on Lake Superior, there is a thread of connection to their existence. They date all the way back to the times of the Ice Age. Some of the big ungulates and the animals that were here at the time are actually extinct now, but the woodland caribou still hangs on by a thread. And it wasn't that the landscape, it was the changes of human movement into and development, and the caribou have had to find the island groups, whether up on Lake Nipigon or out in the Slates as we are here and in other places, to maintain some vestige of survival. Our daughter was growing up with this. Any family that's done any outdoor activities with children know there's a huge amount to be learned by that land. Now they call it land-based learning, where the land teaches. So from the time of being a couple of weeks old and listening to the sound of the wind and the pines and the water against the canoe, those teachings are something that we don't have the expertise for. But we need to trust in the earth, and we need to trust in the air and the medicines that flow from the winds that come through the pines and the conifers, that this whole world is giving to us all the time, all that we need. And children are so intrinsically happy in nature if they're given the opportunity to be immersed in it, to use their senses, to feel the land, to smell it, to taste it, to touch it, to listen. We forget now. And interpretation brings us back to that awareness that we must use our senses to tell our stories. And here I'm going to take you to a map of Lake Superior. And I want to first share what a watershed is, because I talk in that word quite a bit. The green line around the white area holds all the waters that flow through the soil, the ground, through the trees. Everything is moving towards Lake Superior. That green line is a height of land. That line is a real line on the land Whereas the line that we might see through Lake Superior as a border between Canada and the United States is a false line that only we recognize. Granted, it's there when we cross the border, but the fish don't notice it, the birds don't notice it. I also want you to notice that as the years have gone along, these maps for us have become populated with many Indigenous community names, and so beautifully they're coming back to using the traditional names. So Biktagong Nishnabeg up near Puckasaw National Park, as a for instance, in the top sort of right part of the lake, is a community. And we challenge ourselves all the time to learn the Anishinaabe-Moan names. Or if you speak another language or languages in the world, you know how good it feels to hear your language spoken to describe your landscape and your experiences. And I think everybody traveling, an interpretation part of our program, we have incorporated learnings from Indigenous speakers to bring that language into interpretation. So this is a bit of a formal thing, but I do want to recognize that we are two sister organizations that formed because we wanted a much bigger way to figure out how can we protect these waters of Lake Superior. Certainly we can't just do this on our own. So it's been a 20-year project so far, and that's just how we're structured, with two organizations aboard across 2 countries, and 2 new board members who are Indigenous from either side of the medicine line. And that has given us a very unique perspective on working within the land trust community. Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy is a land trust, part of the land trust community, and all those little dots and little flags I've marked on there show the different land trusts that work cooperatively together. But the work of land trust has been largely about protecting ecology. And one of the things I'm going to speak to you about tonight is now the work of Indigenous-led conservation, which brings in very important understandings that the medicines and the foods that come from the land intrinsically tie us to our understanding and our ability to protect what we need to survive. And in fact, shutting out Indigenous peoples through a lot of our protected places in very formal and violent ways of such as our park systems, is really a truth under the Truth and Reconciliation process in Canada, to recognize that we all must get into the work of understanding what land back means, that biodiversity is held by the Indigenous peoples around this beautiful planet we live on. The best biodiversity. So here is one of our interpretive reserves, or our I should say one of our preserves, the Francis Hill Preserve. And we put in some new infrastructure during COVID with the boardwalk and the ability to have a teaching platform. And that was really exciting because we really want to, we got so many things to interpret at this small wetland. A 9-acre wetland can be a voice for the greatest wetland in Canada, one of the greatest in North America, which is the Hudson Bay lowlands, now threatened the peatlands by all kinds of development proposals that relate to, our movement into green energy, by the irony of it. So we all need to understand, and as we do interpretation, to understand the incredible role of the reeds, for instance, and the sedges and the way they hold toxins, the way the mosses hold water like sponges. The unique plants that live in a fen, which is a rich wetland, needs really close study and experts to help you share and understand the many plants. Sue Mead's one of those experts, put us together a list and working together so we could see and understand the diversity of this place and why these peatlands work the way they do here, with water flowing from both directions to refresh the fen. We also need, most importantly, really the basket that holds, or should, Western science, traditional Western education, all those different pies that we've separated things into, that Indigenous wisdom lets us hold it all in one basket to understand that this place here, in the way that Miriam Agawa shared, this hill, Francis Hill Preserve, is to her, it's homeland. It's where she grew up. Chiwekwe Dong, which is Guli Bay, she says, people think it's meaning Big Bay. It means the place that hugs you. As we share some cedar tea that we've made to bring over here, she shares these stories with great humor and love, and even acknowledges that she doesn't share all her medicine knowledge with people because she worries that those medicines will disappear with the greed that we sometimes have. And then there are the Western tools. And just like taking the samples of the peat, and we're determining how acidic the peat is in different parts here. And it shows how non-acidic it is, and therefore it has a great diversity of plants. And that's because of the refreshing of water from Lake Superior and from the wetland above. So I said this a moment ago, but interpretation is the key to taking a little wee wetland like this and turning it into a voice for the protection of peatlands and wetlands everywhere. And everywhere we have small places close to people that are nature can always teach us about the larger and important ecosystems that they represent. Another aspect of protection of preserved places where interpretation is rich and wonderful, the Gargantua Islands that we had paddled through in 1983. We now, all these years later, coming back and in the role with the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy, discover in going to the ceremonies at that Batchewana First Nation held at Nanabijang, the reclaiming of territory where their village was once burned down for the making of the park. The Métis community also were evicted and their homes were burned down. And that kind of storytelling, those truths about Indigenous people need to be told in the park itself. 50% of the backcountry users come through these islands, and knowing them as Nanabijang is a very important aspect of the experience of those islands, 20 of them held by the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy, but with a future view to how we do this work in a good way with Indigenous leadership. The beautiful places that there are to camp and everything. These islands came into our care through American Friends of Canadian Conservation, and at their lead, Sandy Tassel and Craig Lee from the West Coast, who set up these incredible possibilities for Americans who, and I'll put it in air quotes, own land and want to, in Canada, and they want to put it into conservation. This is a mechanism that gives them ability to benefit financially in tax works on both sides of the border. And they managed to initiate that and make that happen so it can be cared for in a good way for the future. We're also part of the Water Trails community. And we became part of the Water Trails community when we worked on part of the 25,000 kilometer Trans-Canada Trail. So the dark blue line, I'll come back to it. It links the bottom right of the screen at Sault Ste. Marie to Thunder Bay in the top northwest. And this was a really wonderful project that enabled us to bring to life our three pillars of conservation, education, and active participation. We are kind of the active participation people with all our paddling. For Gary and I, it's been our life and our love to be in canoes and kayaks and paddling. And this beautiful water trail had two superlatives, because now I show you the inset map of the Trans-Canada Trail system, which is all those red lines across Canada. And it's a huge network of trails on land, on water. And when it came about to creating this is the original highway, and having the voices and the stories, not so much as a recreational, but more as an opportunity for Indigenous nations all around to be connected to the water trails of Lake Superior, to tell a more full and ancestral and future knowing of these precious waters. And we took on another role as well with this infrastructure of accessibility. And this is another area of work that we are wonderfully involved with. But it does mean that, interpretive guided experiences are opened up to other communities in our area. And our friend Diane Morell, for instance, who navigates the world in a wheelchair, gets in her kayak and she says, I'm just so free out here on the water. And it was a beautiful experience to put in infrastructure in 16 sites along the North Shore. And it'll be a project that'll be ongoing. These big waters of Lake Superior that are so beautiful, and in Batchewana Bay, where the waters flow through here all year long, where the Batchewana River flows out. We had to acknowledge that in encouraging people by creating these water trail access points, we had to acknowledge that we needed some safe, accessible way to get people on the water if we were going to encourage this. How could we best do that? And so in 2018 and 19, we started developing Canoes for Conservation. And we thought about right at the outflow to Lake Superior, the St. Mary's River, there's an amazing place for interpretation here. And it's just like right under everybody's noses, right at this, border towns here with US, Sioux, Michigan, Sioux, Canada, and all the Indigenous nations of this region right here. Gave us a really beautiful opportunity to tell stories. And as we embarked on this with a 26-foot canoe and a 36-foot canoe, we really realized quickly we had these incredible ecology stories to tell, whether it was the peregrine falcons nesting in the International Bridge, or it was, obviously about the waters and understanding where they were flowing, the whitefish of the stories of the river, that there is the National Historic Site of the Sioux Canal, which is the picture there, because it is the last in the lift up through the Great Lakes, which has both a very huge ecological impact story of the late 1800s when it was put in. And of course, that whole canal system became the big invitation to invite such new residents as the sea lamprey. And it was at one time one of the busiest, moneyest lock systems in the world. There is that whole historical story that is told in Sault Ste. Marie. But to our surprise, early on, people weren't telling stories about the much, much older stories of Indigenous people living and harvesting from the lands here, from these waters, traveling on them, the trade, like all that historical connections going back thousands of years is really the thread of the story that we wanted to tell. Hence, our canoe wasn't called a Voyageur canoe. Gitchichiman was a big canoe. Or Mishichiman, as the Cree say, which is the word where Michigan comes from. Canoes for Conservation wanted to provide these ecological and cultural tours. And as a teaching platform to do interpretation, the big canoe is amazing. So we outfitted it with wonderful support that we received to enable people to come without anything. We provide them with everything they need. And I will tell you the little secret behind it all, because during COVID, when we were caught doing this as well, we were glad on a river with a current that we also added an electric motor to this kit. So we could use that in times to enable us to provide a safe, really stable experience. But all that comes down to the guides. We needed a team of guides. And this was the first time, like many years ago, Gary went out west, met the Interpretive Guide Association. We connected with the organization, understanding how good this could be for interpretation all around Lake Superior, with our own base of stories to tell everywhere. And that was the key to having the guys not just trained in the canoe, which is what's happening here for their ORCA certifications to operate the big canoe, but also this was the first time we met. Tracy came out and, well, actually Tracy says we did meet many years before that, but anyway, ran our first interpretive guide program to certify guides, not all working for the Conservancy, but for Parks Canada and other independent guides. And it was just a really an amazing experience, bringing this whole program together for the first time and running tours the first summer in 2019 up the coast. And the coast is incredible, of course, with all of the opportunities out of Batchewana, out of the park, and the pictographs and the, you know, the places that we can go. But I was very surprised how much we fell in love with the river itself, despite its industrial aura. The richness of the historical, ecological, geographical place that you could see from outer space. So we use all kinds of interpretive props. And Peter Greb, who's in the bow there, he was one of the leaders in our organization that worked with us to develop the program, develop the interpretive guide materials, and figure out all the pieces to make this a really great experience for people. And during COVID, we had whole cohorts of folk coming all the way from Toronto, overnighting in the Sioux to have a big canoe experience and then heading home again. That was a really magical time for us to bring people together. Indigenous community members who came with grandparents and grandchildren, that multi-generational experience that we'd have in the canoe together, because it was a place that everybody could be safe and experience the paddling as to whatever degree they felt comfortable. And that has been a real joy of this experience. So I want to share some of our Indigenous partnerships, because as I take you into this next section, I'm certainly not going into all our different experiences, but as you can see, it's been a very rich time of learning. I want to acknowledge that we've gone through a very important time here in Canada. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was led by Murray Sinclair, Mishan Igijik Iban, who died recently, was the commissioner who led us through a process, listening with 3 commissioners. They listened to thousands and thousands of stories of residential school survivors across Canada. And that story opened up for us a whole understanding of a genocide that existed in colonial Canada's history. And many of the residual experiences are happening with Indigenous communities today, not least of which is the lack of fresh water provided to communities, the accessibility to clean drinking water for everyone. So these stories have been shared with us in beautiful ways, whether it's been paddling down the Pic River with Duncan Michano top right, it's been working with Shirley Horn, an elder and a past chief for Missinabie Cree top left, doing a water day ceremonial opportunity, to Miriam Agawa there, I showed that picture, but an elder who lives in the region talking about medicines, to Myrna Michano from Beektagong Nishnabeg, who did a whole lot of interpretation for Pakistan National Park. And that has been, language has been a really big part of trying to get people to understand, even in a very small way, how absolutely critical Indigenous languages are to our understanding and our relationship with the natural world. So there we are out at the pictographs. But I'm going to take you back to the St. Mary's, because although those stories are very beautiful, we, in planning out, as we went through COVID and, all trying to survive and figure things out, there was a wonderful opportunity came forward with the Métis community. Their leadership, Mitch Case, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis community were actually, opening a new center. And we said, what an awesome partnership of the story we're trying to tell about water, but the intrinsic nature of having an Indigenous-led experience that tells an Indigenous relationship, I should say a human relationship with these lands and waters. And that is what is missing in a lot of our ecological and Western science and our conservation initiatives. We don't put us into the equation of nature. We have been outside of it for so long. So here's a map. It shows you where the Métis Center is. We said, wow, it's so close to the river. We've got this amazing story to tell in a walking and paddling way. The Métis Center was a reconciliation gift back from the Anglican Church that actually built it on the Métis burial grounds at this site, the Métis burial site. And so in taking it back, I'll be showing you another picture where they had the official opening this fall, which has been super exciting work that's been ongoing for a number of years. Mitch is sitting in the bow of the canoe there, looking at an image that Dustin Hookstein, a Métis community member, who is one of our guides, sharing with people in the canoe here. So we developed this partnership in 2023 to develop MetisTours, and we jointly work on this together to give people this water experience and this land experience, this interpretive experience. And it was a partnership also with the Métis Nation of Ontario. So there's Mitch outside of the center. We're just doing one of our tours just to get this thing off the ground. The Canal Historic Site and these places here. I just want to draw your attention to this red line with all its lines on it is actually showing a historic shoreline before the creation of the canals, the building of the locks, and all the reclamation of the land that has taken place where the old shoreline is where that red line is. And all those red lines are the surveyed Métis river lots, which of course they didn't have all these lines drawn. It was a Western colonial way of doing that. But the map that comes forth here with all these names is this incredible, two of our guides, for instance, they'll talk about their family connections to the Busno family, where, where the city hall is today, that is Dustin Hookstein's family. We can see geographical points of view from the shoreline, seeing a whole historical context, not just an ecological one, but one where we see. And the only point of references that give us a knowledge of where things really are is that the old stone house was the only place that didn't get burned down. And back up on the top left of the screen, Fort Creek is there today, though very few people in the community know incredible importance to the Métis story. So this beautiful partnership, we wanted it to be walking and paddling. We thought by doing both, we would get, we could create in the end a whole suite of different experiences and the inclusion of the big canoe naturally. Now we come back to the very key aspect of all of this, interpretation. Interpretation of a whole suite of stories takes that really rigorous editing, creating those themes, creating those nuggets so that people can go away and understand the stories that we're telling, so they take home with a relevant way a connection to water in their own homes, a connection to Indigenous stories in their own place of living. And so we went through the course. It was deeply interesting for all of us. And I think also with Tracy, it was very much building the course around the Métis story. Everybody working on their different projects with their different props and being able to actually then put it out into the community right away that season was very, very exciting. using some of the props. Mitch shares with us, you know, how we can tell the stories. He walks around the community with us, get ourselves together. Bindigan is the word hidden in the school on that big painted wall, one of our painted buildings in Sault Ste. Marie. It's a welcome in Anishinaabe-Moan. I think it's like, you know, welcome, come in. It's going to be a verb because that's the language, is a very action and relationship language. And the guides are, you know, taking in some of these details that we'll share as the highlights of the tour along the way. We built a booking platform, we built a website, all those kinds of things that are necessary to get a business going. We had a set of maps that we use both for the Conservancy with the watershed, but also the Métis, a beautiful map showing the homeland, its connection to the west, and the Selkirk settlement, the Red River in the west, and the Great Lakes, because the Métis here are not Red River carts and buffalo, they are the big canoe, Gichichiman. And some of these places of knowing and learning have these signs on them to that don't tell us what the real histories are. And learning these through the Métis, the difference between Métis and voyageurs. Voyageurs are a job, courrier de bois are a job. The Métis is an ethnicity. And our very first tour we did that season was with a big community of immigrant folks who had come to live in Sault Ste. Marie. And it was super exciting to get this firsthand Indigenous knowledge of this country that they have come to live in. This place is a funny one because the Red River expedition under Colonel Woolsey portaged the Sioux Rapids beginning in this date. And the crazy part about it is that the information center, they had no idea this cairn had sat there forever. But it doesn't tell you that Colonel Wolseley was on his way as the colonial imposition to take over the Métis settlement out in the Red River, and that it's not the Louis Riel rebellion, but that it is a resistance as they were resisting a colonial government coming in to take over their territory, which they had not ceded to the Canadian or the British at the time. So these are really, really wonderful, truthful, historical stories that all of us missed out in school. And of course, history is told by those who want to tell it in a certain way. And the word erasure comes to mind, that is truly what happens is that I put this one up because this woman came all the way from Germany to experience real Indigenous experiences in Turtle Island. And she wrote to us afterwards. She traveled thousands of miles, and this tour, she said, was the best experience that she had in learning in a really truthful way about the Indigenous story of this landscape. Out on the water, really, the medicine line is the line I shared with earlier. There is a line going down the river here. You can see the American and Canadian flags on the international bridge when you're in the water here. And as we cross over, we ask everybody, have they seen the line? Did we cross a fence? And we talk about that because it's really important to understand that water connects us. It doesn't divide us. And I just love all the smiles. This summer we had all these Rhodes Scholar bus tours. And so there were a lot of older folks doing this, which gave us also a beautiful experience of knowing how accessible the experience is to people of all abilities. And I was amazed by some folks couldn't really paddle, but boy, did they ever enjoy that part about getting in the canoe. More example of using props during the tours, a touchstone spot at the birch tree to talk about the medicines, the foods, the materials that build the canoes and baskets for collecting sap. All of those stories, Dustin particularly has been our lead and main guide for the program, with Lauren Towell being certainly alongside. You know, it's really hard getting a program going, a full-time job and all that sort of thing. And his love of food and his love of connections right down to the little plants growing through the sidewalk reminds you that even people without food, the foods are growing all around us. This is the restoration of this old lock, explaining this was once a wetland, and the big canoes that would come through here, if the big lock broke, all of downtown Sault Ste. Marie would flood up to Bay Street, which it was originally the edge of the bay. Oh, and I love the elder there driving his little vehicle. Crossing over the bridge of Fort Creek, a story that we wanted to be able to tell on this journey with the Métis is the story also of the darkness of our behavior with water. This river that doesn't really get recognized, Fort Creek, which once people paddled right up to the fort, the Hudson Bay Fort, and up on to the Métis village in French Town. People look at it now and see sort of sediment and so on. We paddle up it. The kids always say in the canoe, it feels so peaceful. We see green herons, we see black-crowned night herons, we see blue herons, we see ducks. It's a really beautiful, life-filled place of bird song. But right there, behind that fence, Dustin is explaining that behind this fence is the history of a huge toxic waste site in Sault Ste. Marie. All the junk from the steel plant and the paper mill was put there, all the metal, it was just a mess. A lot of the visual on the surface has been cleaned up. Nature takes over, makes it green and beautiful, but the fence is there because the toxins are still in the ground. And of course, they would still be moving into the water through the soils. And so these are the hidden stories of water that we also want to uncover in our Métis tours. Some of the darkness we must shine a light on it in order to bring a light forward. And the beautiful way Indigenous people are such a bridge, and the Métis are an incredible bridge because of their ancestral ethnicity. It was born out of the connection between the Scottish, the Irish, the French, the fur traders, and mainly Indigenous women, who then formed their own communities, their own culture, their music, their foods. And as we stand outside the center here, I want to end on what we do at the end of our tours. We started doing it in the canoe, but then we thought this is more like the way we are. And so Christmas time is a great time to share this. That coming together, and what's on the picnic table there is some food and some tea. Gary always makes us cedar tea, offers sema, tobacco, picks all the cedar, makes the cedar tea. It's very healthful medicine, beautiful drink. And then we offer smoked whitefish that's been harvested by Agawa Fishery or Sayers Fishery. And then we sometimes will have, some other things like the maple sugar. We offer that because it was made locally, but it is way the Métis carried the maple sugar. They didn't carry bottles of maple syrup around, and it was an industry, and still is in our area. And I think around food and having kind of this celebration time at the end of our tours is a really beautiful way to remind us that all around the world it is food and conversation around traditional times, ceremonies, and just looking at the way we all do things differently, yet it is a common bond that we share because we need to eat. And this story here of the Métis and Sault Ste. Marie, it's a detailed story that I won't tell in this program, but the most important, and I'm bringing them up again because they were here to learn about it. June Smart, smiling with her beautiful smile. Lauren Towell, they're on the right side there. She's one of our guides, her mom, her sisters. That the most important Indigenous court case in Canada was fought here in a 10-year battle that started with the Powleys harvesting a moose just north of Sault Ste. Marie in Goulet River, actually. And in the harvesting of that moose, they were charged. And under our Constitution in 1982, the Métis had their harvesting rights, and they needed it to be a case that could be brought forward to enshrine this. And it took 10 years, 14 judges, all through the Supreme Court of Canada in 2003. Last year was the 20th anniversary when it was celebrated that the Métis harvesting rights are enshrined in the Constitution, and they're now working on their nation-to-nation agreement with the federal government. This is a long, long process, but the grand opening of the Métis Heritage Centre, I wanted to just finish with that because it's a beautiful, it was a beautiful day, and you can now see the fullness of the extent of this place because it has the old, which is actually the reddish colored building, has a whole cultural center in it, holding their archives, and there's a digital archive and all this learning that'll be able to go on, a home for it all. And then the center behind it, which was built a few years later with the old the stone, the red sandstone, is a place of gathering, to have food, to learn traditional skills. And then there's a little administration building. So it's a home for the Métis community in Sault Ste. Marie to tell their incredible story and to remind you once again where the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis community is. I know I haven't given you any time to ask any questions here, but as I just fade out on these final images of paddling water, we are water. We were born in water. We were born through water. Our planet is mostly water. And so the beautiful story of water that is told here, that falls from the sky at this times in the form of snow, and in our area, I don't know what it's like where everybody is, but we are also born of water. We were born from the stars. And so these beautiful night sky places remind us of those connections that we also have with the beautiful planet within this dark and glowing night sky. And I will stop sharing. Uh-oh, now how do I do that? Escape. There we go. Okay. I would forget how to get out of it. I have no need to leave right away, but those who do, I totally understand. I have a hard time sticking to time, but there we go.
Thank you, Joanie. There is one question in the chat from Bonnie. She is asking, how does or how much does the change of weather affect your work?
That's a lovely question. I'll just speak exactly to producing a tour program like this. The Métis are very excited about telling a winter story because, of course, no one stopped. And right now, it's kind of strange to talk about this because we have a huge postal strike going on in Canada. But by hook or by crook, the mail got through, and Métis were letter carriers. And the winter they traveled, dog team and snowshoe. And then there's all that traditional knowledge around how did they do it? On what did they do it? What did they harvest? And telling winter stories about living and surviving in the winter, because we still have a winter in our area because of the big Lake Superior that dumps great loads of snow on us.
Great. I'm just seeing a lot of thank yous.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I can't see you or where you're from, but I hope you know this is a great big invitation to come to our part of the world. There are all kinds of other experiences besides what we're doing, but get out your map and have a look at where we are and learn more.
Thanks so much, Joanie. It was lovely to see you and lovely to have you come and join us and talk about your projects on Lake Superior. We really appreciate having you here.
Well, it's just an honor, and I'm so honored to be on actually the Interpretive Guide Association's board this year and to be learning more deeply about this incredible organization that you've had going for so many years and contributes so much to interpretation as part of this global interpretive alliance. So thank you for inviting me.
It was great having you on our board, and I couldn't have thought of a better person to present for this global alliance. I think the projects that you've been working on and the relationships you've built in Lake Superior are perfect for what the global alliance stands for. So thank you so much. I do see one
very
comment
welcome.
from Kit Cross. Do you want to share that, Amber?
Yes, so Kit says, I travel through the canal a lot. I guide on expedition ship. Where can I access materials regarding the Watershed Métis Center?
Oh, if you go to superiorconservancy.org, just like the word superior and conservancy, hopefully you saw that enough tonight.org, you'll definitely get to me. And the Métis are just hiring their curator and getting the center going, and it will be a wonderful place that you'll be able to connect to. The Métis Nation of Ontario is a great source of knowledge about the Métis story and connections back to the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis community. So that's where I would start.
And I added that to the chat. So if anybody wants to see, you can just click on the link in the chat.
Yeah, there's a drop down that's got Métis on it, and it's hard to keep up. I'm telling you, with social media and everything. But it's a 2025 project.
Think that's it for questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Well,
thanks, Chuck. Thanks, NAI.
Thanks, everyone,
so
for coming today. Joanie, I actually spent many summers on St. Mary's River at a family camp when I was growing up in the 60s. So I remember Lake Superior very fondly.
That is wonderful. And of course, I really didn't acknowledge, but we're in this special season now. Maybe that's what I did say when I showed the tea and the food and everything. So wishing everybody best of the season.
Excellent.
Well,
I
thanks
think this
everybody
is the
for
last
coming
session
today.
of 25.
Yeah, thank you to IGA and our speaker, and we hope everybody gained a new perspective on heritage interpretation. Please see our website, www.gahi.online, for information about our next webinar in the series and to register. And in closing, I just want to remind everybody that interpretation is a seed, not a tree. So we planted more seeds tonight. Thanks everyone for joining us.
I love that. Thank you, Chuck.
Great idea,
Thanks,
Tracy. Discounted tours for IGA members.
That wasn't from me because there's a whole bunch of people under my name at this right now. I don't know what's going on, but whoever suggested that, maybe reach out to Joanie, and that might be a hit.
Oh, that's really wonderful. Oh my goodness, I'm looking at where some of the places are. If you can send me any of the places, because I haven't looked at the chat, so I would be so interested to know where everybody came from tonight.
Yeah, definitely from Mexico. I don't know where else. I'm not sure how many people were from other parts of the world. So
There's someone from Australia.
oh wow, okay.
The Blue
So
Mountains, Australia.
How wonderful.
Pennsylvania.
Okay, I got to tell you something before we leave. I'm sure everybody's gone now, but that's one thing I used to do.
Sorry,
is it gonna go?
I don't think not
It's
everybody's
okay.
gone.
It's okay. It's just it's a connection to Australia.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
I just want to say, when Sela was growing up, I used to say to her all the time, look down between your feet, Sela. And we got out a globe one day and we put a knitting needle through it. There's actually a name of the place that's exactly opposite where you are on the earth, and I can't remember what it's called. But I used to point out where Australia is. We're like 1,500 kilometers out in the ocean. I say, you get swimming up and you come out into the ocean near Australia. And it's literally right beneath your feet right now.
I bet you she's never forgotten that.
She hasn't.
That's great.
All right. Well, you guys have an awesome holiday too. It was so nice to be with you all this evening.
See you. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks, Chuck. Bye.